recorder. Fancy. All right, I'm an alcoholic. My name's Greg. First, I want to thank Blake for inviting me. And actually, that's one of the more honest introductions I've heard. Like, if I would have known there were more people here, I would have gotten a more spiritual speaker. That's legitimate right there. Thanks for the prayer, too, and some others. That's really always really good. I didn't know that was happening, so I did pray in the bathroom before that. I've been taught to, pray in the bathroom, and so I've gotten used to getting on my knees in a stall or whatever. And my prayers are just real simple, kind of like your words, your message to God, my voice, and we'll just see what happens. I have a lot of respect for this group. I know at least 2 or 3 of the founders of this group, and I think I know the first newcomer to this group. To me, I think in the 5th tradition it talks about like each group ought to be a spiritual entity, and to me an entity is not, it's something that's alive. It's like a living, breathing organism, and I could feel it coming in here. The welcoming there. I was welcome to a terrible cup of coffee. I told her, Sarah was the one who said that. I've had worse for sure, and Steve says when he made it, it's worse. So I'm just really grateful. I can just, feel. There's somebody. I didn't know the difference between a meeting of a group and a group when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, and now I do. And I think the home group for me has gotten more important actually as time has gone on. So the name of my home group is called the 3rd Tradition Group. We meet in Charlotte Monday night. So I do live in Charlotte. Really, it's not that far. Where I live in South Charlotte, so I'm practically halfway here. So it really wasn't that. Tom I used to say it's like going to the store. And that's really, going to the other side of Charlotte in traffic is not much worse than coming here without traffic. So it's really not that bad, and less frustrating too, to be honest. So it's not even an inconvenience at all. And I've always kind of told if it's not inconvenient, it's not service work. So it really wasn't even inconvenient. So, my home group's 3rd tradition. I said that. We meet Monday night. We study out of the big book and discuss what we've read out of the big book. The last Monday of the month we do a tradition, and my group started, that I'm a member of, not my group, but the group I'm a member of started May 23rd, that's my sobriety day, May 23rd, 2005. My group started in May of 2003. And so in about 2 months or so, we'll have our 21st anniversary. So that's how old my group is. And it's grown, and I don't necessarily think bigger is better. But, when I joined the group, there was like 10 people in the group. And I bet you we had 80 people Monday night. And for our business meeting after, we had like 35. So we're a pretty active 3 legacy group. We participate in CPC and PI and corrections and treatment. And we're part of AA as a whole. So I've really, I'm not going to say it's the best group in the world. I've kind of, I don't think that's the case. And I also don't think that, if someone walks into another meeting and then it's not the best group in the world, that God's not there for them or whatever. But it's a good group of Alcoholics Anonymous. And and I'm from Charlotte. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about my childhood or my prenatal experience. But I am from Charlotte, and I grew up in a home that, a lot of alcoholics come from that type of home, and it's really not a bad one. I will say my mother's an alcoholic. She'll tell you that. My mother is 42 years sober. She didn't start drinking until she was like 40, and she got sober at 54, and she's 95 now. So in about 2 months she'll have, she got sober and was born in June. So anyway, she's got about 42 years of sobriety. And I saw her drink. I saw her hide bottles. And I saw Alcoholics Anonymous work in her life. Like what our family couldn't do, what she couldn't do on her own, what apparently no one else could do, Alcoholics Anonymous was able to, save her life. And with that, so I saw AA work in her life when I was a teenager. And with that being said, I thought I would never need that. I thought, knowledge and willpower and would be sufficient. Now, I started drinking right a couple years before she got sober. I was 12, I think soon to be 13. And so she was kind of on fire for AA, kind of still, somewhat new and really into it. Not that she got out of it, but, and you hear a lot. And I did experience this, that like a head full of AA and a belly full of liquor doesn't mix. And I didn't get sober right away. I came to AA, got drunk, came to AA, got drunk. So I kind of understand that. But I can also tell you that my mom's head full of AA and my belly full of liquor did not mix at all. Like we like butted heads from early on in terms of that time. And she thought I needed Alcoholics Anonymous, and I clearly thought I didn't. And we just didn't get along. It's funny, when I started coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, people would, oh, I just love your mom. And I was like, well, you just thinking to myself, you just don't know her. You have no idea. But that's changed now, my perception, through the amends process, and I might talk about that. We're very tight. My mom does live in a retirement home now. She's almost 96. And I see her about once or twice a week. I go by. And she's on a walker. She doesn't drive anymore, but she's actually doing pretty good. But anyway, so like I said, I started drinking when I was 12, and my first drink was like what I guess we'll call it a playground cocktail. Like, I did go to the Charlotte bartending school. It was the only school I ever completed other than like elementary school. So that's kind of a theme of my story. I'm a great starter, and I'm a lousy finisher. Like, I start stuff and I'm on fire, and it usually takes me only a couple weeks, work, starts to happen, and I fizzle out. I don't like I'm a social worker. Meaning I can work for a couple hours and I'm good. I can quit working anytime I want. And so I would just quit stuff all the time. I didn't do well, and but I did finish the Charlotte bartending school. It was helpful that it was only 1 week. It was like Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. We made fake drinks with like food coloring, and this is, if it's this color, it's a Long Island iced tea or whatever. So I did finish the Charlotte bartending school, but I started drinking well before I went there. And so it was a playground cocktail, and it was just a little bit of gin, a little bit of vodka, just everything that was in my parents' liquor cabinet. But I didn't want to get caught stealing. So I just took like a little bit, because I don't want any bottle noticeably deficient. And I just put it all in a mason jar. And I probably put Coca-Cola or orange juice or something in there. I don't recall, but I probably did. But I took it to school. I had a mason jar. I had a little book bag, and I had it in there, and I took it to school. I had a friend who did basically the same thing, and we were in the back of science class. And I was now at what we call junior high school at the time, and so I was like this small fish in this bigger pond. And I already like had a fear of people, but it seemed like it got even more so being just around bigger kids, and I just never felt a part of. And it's not really for anyone that anything that anyone did. I just didn't feel connected. I didn't feel a part of my family. I didn't feel a part of school. The only time I would be okay in my mind was if I could be like the best at something. I don't know if that's like, what that is, but if I could, be the best on the team, then I would be okay. I had to be better than everyone just to be okay. And I'm not really better than people most stuff, so that was few and far between. But when I was at school and I started drinking, I took that first drink, and I took a gulp. I took a big swallow, and it tasted terrible. I mean, I wasn't expecting it to taste particularly good, but it tasted worse than I predicted. And I mean, it just took everything I had to hold it down. And what happened after that, it was like it was my first spiritual experience, or it was so close that I could not tell the difference. Like, I just got a little smile on my face, and then I took a little bit more, and I got a bigger smile, and then I took a little bit more, and I got a bigger smile, and all of a sudden I did not feel apart from anymore. I felt a part of. I felt equal to everyone. I felt like I was one of the guys, and it just changed my perception. It's just almost like that, 20 seconds or something like that. Everything changed. My whole perception of everything changed at school. And so I think if that happens for someone, at least like someone like me, I'm going to try and do that again. And that really became my mission, was to just repeat that kind of spiritual experience. Or what, at that time, we didn't like calling alcohol booze. We thought that was negative. Like a couple of friends, it was spirits, because it was just spiritual stuff. And I played football. I played in the fall. I played basketball in the winter. I played baseball in the spring. And I played golf and tennis in the summer. So I was playing sports pretty much year-round. And I was pretty good. I mean, I probably would have told you at one point that I could have gone pro, which is completely not true, but far from it. But I was pretty good. But as soon as I started drinking, it didn't happen all at once, but the things that I enjoyed started to fall off. I quit baseball first. I quit football second. I quit basketball third. And I just, golf, I just started. And my grades started to plummet too. I mean, not right off the bat, but I had made A's and B's. I was a decent student. And all of a sudden, I made a C. The year I started drinking, I made the first C I ever made. So my peak was elementary school. I did really well in elementary school. And then 7th grade on was like, just like in Bill's story, gradually things got worse. It was just like the slow descent. And then the ski jump happened a little later. But it was like the slow descent. I made my first C. And then the next year I made my first D, and I'm not into school, I don't really care. And the next year I made my first F, and then I started to care because I had to go to summer school, and I hated that. And I thought summers were supposed to be off. And the last semester I was in high school, I had a report card that looked like this. It was 5 Fs and 1 C. And the C was in weight training. I did not get credit for it because if you miss more than 9 times, even if you made an A, you don't get credit for it. So, because what I was doing, I was starting to go to the lake a lot. I had a friend whose parents had a lake house, and they didn't use it most of the time, and we would fake like we were going to school, and we'd just go to the lake and drink. And I've had 2 sponsors. My first sponsor kind of did the math for me, and he's like, 5 Fs and a C, and he's like, that's a .25 grade point average. And he was like, your blood alcohol content and your GPA were like probably neck and neck. And but I didn't really care about school. Drinking was just more important. I fooled my parents. Anyways, I started getting into music. Now, sports started to fall off. Music started to become more and more important. And some people would say that, and that means that they are playing guitar, or they are playing piano, or they are singing, or they are performing and improving, their skills in music. I didn't do that at all. I just listened to it. I would just drink and listen to music. But I tell you, when I was drinking, I could crank up a stereo with the best of them. I would go out late at night in my parents' car, and they had a cassette player in the car because I don't want to wake anyone up. And I would just sit there and drink, and I would plug in cassette tapes, and just jam out in the car. And I would do that for hours. And then I'm really grateful for our traditions, all of them. I think what the traditions do is they're basically about widening the doors of AA, certainly within the confines of alcoholism. So, so wide that maybe my little narrow mind can't even comprehend how wide those doors are. And I'm really grateful for the third one, where it talks about our membership ought to include all who suffer from alcoholism, because I started to do drugs. Drugs are a part of my history. I probably won't make it a big part of my story tonight, most likely. But when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I didn't know. I had no idea. I thought maybe I wasn't welcome in AA. And I'm really grateful that the people who surrounded me when I was willing, they were like, look, we don't care about what you've done, but let's talk about what happens when you drink. And they were able to identify the allergy and the obsession. And I think the big book, which is how I took the steps, or where I took the steps, it has a lot of directions. It has a lot of solutions in it. I also think it has a lot of questions in it. And people gave me the time that I needed to answer those questions and diagnose myself if I'm an alcoholic. Because I figured out at some point along the line that I knew, without ever coming to AA, I knew once I started drinking, something was happening that wasn't happening with other people. I could not stop. Because I tried so many times to change the brand, to quit at 11 p.m., to spend only $40, to spend $20, to do all that, and it was never working. In fact, there was a bank, one of the last bank accounts I had. Now, I don't think this could happen in a bank account now. You used to put checks in an envelope, like the ATM didn't read it. And there was a time, even if your bank account had no money in it, there was a time somewhere around 1 a.m. where there was a change of the business day, and they could not register how much was in your account, so it would automatically give you $40. So I was at every night for a period of time at that bank, just starting at around 1 a.m. for 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, just doing deposits, no funds available, no funds available, no funds available, bam, $40. It was like magic, it was awesome. Now, my first amends was paying what was then First Charter Bank $81.66 a month I paid it off sooner, but I think it was over the course of a year or something like that. And they, the bank cut off my credit card, and I was like, look, because what I would do is I would take an old paycheck stub, not a paycheck, and put it in there and be like, oh man, I messed up. I put it in the stub, not the check. And they're like, no, we'll give you a different kind of ATM card without like a Visa on it. So I knew that once I started drinking, I couldn't stop. And what I did not know until I started coming and listening to people in Alcoholics Anonymous who had the same problem that I do. And I just think that's so important. I think if I'm going to need your solution, I have to identify with the problem. I think that's the magic of AA. And that I knew I had a problem drinking. I did not know I had a problem not drinking. I had no idea. And I heard a guy one time talk about how his alcoholism began almost like where the bottle ended. That, because I had come to AA, I've been to like 3 treatment centers, not a record. I'm in the middle of the road, I guess. But I would look at the steps that are to my right, and that just doesn't look like the solution to me. That doesn't look like that's going to help me, because I don't have a spiritual problem. I don't have a lack of power. I always thought I had a lack of money. Like, I really thought I just need some money, and that will solve my problems. The first step, I didn't identify with that. The second and third steps are weird to me. They were just weird. One time I went into a meeting, someone took me, and it was a group that split up, and they had a beginner's meeting, and they had another, some kind of other discussion, and they said I should go to the beginner's meeting. I looked up on the wall, and I saw the third step, and I was like, oh God, I'm in a cult. And so I just ran and sat in the car and waited for him, because that looks weird to me. And the fourth step, I knew that was writing, and that's like homework, and I already told you I really don't like school. The fifth step's embarrassing, so I really don't want to do that. The sixth and seventh steps are getting weird again, and then the ninth step, I've got to start to pay money back, and that's expensive. And so I just don't want to do any of the steps at all. So I could understand that I had a problem drinking, but once I started listening to people talk about that they had a problem not drinking, and that what really my problem was the thought that precedes the first drink, that's what really started to grab me. Anyways, I was in Charlotte. I'm kind of bouncing around. I went back. I went off to California. I was into music, and there was one band in particular. But I wanted, the grass was greener. I need to go out to the West Coast. Had a friend who had a VW van, and we started to ride out to California. And the van broke down in Morgantown, West Virginia. Now, there was a book. This was an old VW van. There was a book called The Idiot's Guide to Fixing VW's Van. And I couldn't have done this, but the guy I was with was able to figure out, reading that book, the engine was in the back. He took a bungee cord, went out the driver's side window all the way to the back, and we went from Morgantown, West Virginia to San Francisco, California, shifting gears with a bungee cord going. And we went all the way out to California, and that's where I landed. I'm in the Bay Area in San Francisco, and I am home, I think. And I'm living what I considered the dream. I thought I was happy, joyous, and free. Because my definition of freedom was doing what I wanted, when I wanted. And really, I didn't have regards to consequences, really. I sought pleasure and avoided pain without regards to consequences, really for me or anyone else for that matter. And so I was homeless in San Francisco. And homeless, to me, looks like I did sleep in VW vans. I did sleep in some school buses. I did sleep in Golden Gate Park, so truly outside. I did sleep on someone's couch, but I had no mailing address. I had no visible means of support. And I had no contact with my family basically for 5 years. And they had tried to reach out to me a couple times when they were able to locate where I was. And I wanted to reach out to them too, I really did. But there's this little problem for me, and it's such a small word, but it's also such a big problem, and it's called ego. And I was starting to think to myself, man, they really could have done more for you. Yeah, they could have helped you more. And the truth of the matter is they tried to help me. They were trying to throw me a pink life raft, and I was throwing it back saying, I want the blue one. I didn't want the help they were giving. I wanted them to send me a check or some money. And that's kind of a theme of my story is I'm also a victim. I play the victim role. I blame other people for my problems. My experience is victims don't stay sober. One time I went to my brother's house for Christmas, and I was expecting my usual check for $100 because I was planning to go drink. And it was gloves in there. I'm like, gloves? What? This is terrible. What are gloves? And what I found out later is that they had researched what are good gifts for homeless people. And gloves was a good one. And I was so upset that I didn't have my check. I was ungrateful. I mean, that's another thing that's coming up on inventory for me. I'm just ungrateful. I blame other people for my problems. And I think one of the greatest lines of hope in Alcoholics Anonymous is my problems are of my own making. And I thought that was terrible news, that I'm the problem. I mean, but it really is, it's one of the greatest lines of hope. If Blake's my problem, I can't change Blake. There's nothing I can do. But if I'm the problem, I might not have the power to change myself, but I can take action to allow something greater than myself to produce that change. So anyways, I spent years in California. I did, and this is sort of what some of the illegal activities started to happen, and some of the drugs. So I got involved in selling them as well, and money started to come my way. And I got into a little bit of legal trouble. There was a jury trial I had to go to. Well, I opted to go to. I was facing some charges where I had to go to jail for, a little while. It wasn't like a long sentence. And I was able to afford a lawyer because money had started to come my way. And this was kind of the big lawyer in this town, which was called Santa Cruz. And it was Santa Cruz, California. He was like one of the Harvard lawyers, and he was like, I can beat this. We can beat this on a technicality. I see problems in the arrest and all that. And I was like, well, let's do it. And, but he's like, if we don't win, you're definitely going to jail. There's no plea or anything like that point. But I didn't want to go to jail at all. So I went to court, and I'd sworn off. I was like, if I can get out of this, I'll never drink again. I kind of made that promise to myself, and I really think I meant it as best I could tell. He won the case. I don't know if this happens a lot. There are 12 people on a jury. 3 of the 12 people approached me after the trial was over, and they were like, if I were you, I think I would quit drinking. And I was like, done. I'm never drinking again. That night, I was drunk. I mean, literally. If I had defense against the first drink, it was not effective defense. Drinking to me always looked like a good idea. I've got a bunch of crazy reasons, or good reasons. I got a bunch of good reasons not to take the first drink, and there's just this one insane idea swirling around in my head. It'll be different this time, or just quit tomorrow, or whatever it is. And left to my own power, left to my own devices, that insane idea wins out every single time. So then I'm clearly I'm in the wrong town. Again, I'm not the problem. I've got it. So I went down to Southern California, similar situation, got arrested for almost identical charges. That lawyer was like, you know, we're not beating it. But I can give you, we have an offer for the judge. And the offer was, I don't know if this is in AA literature, I've heard it in some meetings, but it was like, if you can go to 90 meetings in 90 days, and then you stay out of trouble for a year and a half, we'll dismiss this charge, or 2 charges actually. And I'm thinking 90 meetings in 90 days, so that's 1 meeting a day for 3 months. That's 3 long, miserable months. I was like, I can't do it. So I refused that offer. And the judge, my lawyer's kind of like, huh? You know, I was like, I can't do it. I mean, it's every day. It's going to do every day. I can't do it. And I mean, so he comes back with another offer. And this was which was my first of those 3 treatment centers. This one was outpatient, was court ordered. It was like twice a week for 2.5 or 3 hours for 3 months or 2.5 months or something like that. And that's okay, it's not every day. I can do that. So I accepted that. I pled guilty, agreed to go to this for 2.5 months. Now, what I didn't know was as soon as I got there, they handed me a sheet. And the sheet, and I'm like, what is this? And it's a list, and it says meeting, it says time, location, and someone's signature. And they're like, oh, you've got to go to 15 AA, or I guess it probably could have been NA or whatever meetings. And I was like, oh my God, you guys tricked me into, like, I've got to go to meetings now. But I'm in it now. So I went to, this is in a town called Lake Forest, California. I went to a noon meeting every day, Monday through Friday for 3 weeks. And it's very hard for me to start a spiritual journey if I think I have answers. And I went there and my ears were shut. I couldn't hear a word anyone was saying. I'm sure people reached out to me, but I was convinced I was getting a bad break. I was convinced that I didn't need help. And so I didn't hear a word anyone said. Got out of that treatment center, and then, so now I've got to stay out of trouble for a year and a half. That is not looking promising, because I'm not sober at all during this time. I didn't see the light, but I felt the heat. I've got to get out of the state of California. So that's when I moved back to North Carolina, and I moved into a retirement home with my parents. So my parents are now living in a retirement home. I'm the only person under the age of 62 or 65 living in a retirement home with them. And my mom, and this is selfishness and self-centeredness to the core. I didn't think I was hurting anyone but myself. And the truth of the matter is that I was hurting everyone I was coming in contact with. I mean, I was a thief of the highest order. I stole money, but I also stole peace of mind. I stole my parents' right to be happy. And so they were not happy with my actions. They did give me one opportunity. They were like, we've got to go out of town for the weekend. We're going to let you stay here. We're going to trust you. Just all you got to do is water the plants, feed the dog, and keep the place clean, and we'll be happy. And as soon as they left on Friday night, my mother didn't drink, but my dad was a very moderate drinker, but he did have a liquor cabinet, and I just opened that up, and I started drinking, almost like when I was 12 or 13, drinking just everything, a little bit of everything. Alcohol wasn't working. I'm not saying it didn't get me drunk, but I didn't feel a part of anymore. It wasn't doing that for me. It wasn't giving me that sense of well-being. And like I told you, I had some experience with drugs, so I was like, I just got to crank it up a notch. My father was a surgeon, so I'm like, God, he's got to have some pills or something in here. So I opened his liquor cabinet, medicine cabinet, and there's nothing in there. I'm like, how can a surgeon not have anything in here that's... But then I opened my mother's medicine cabinet on the other side of the bathroom, and there is a bottle in there, and I see it. And I don't know what it is, but it has a sticker on it that's red, and it goes down the side of the bottle, and it says, do not mix with alcohol. Bam. That's it. We're going to try it. So I took it, and I took it all. And I didn't feel great the next morning. I wasn't in the hospital, but I've decided I need to find out what I took. look at this further. They had a computer. I knew how to search. I don't know if it was Google at the time, but whatever the internet was. So I just took this empty bottle, because I took it all, and just typed in exactly what it said. And what came up was I'd taken an estrogen supplement for women who've gone through menopause. So I took basically the better part of a month's supply of estrogen in one shot. And my parents came back, and my mom's just like, oh, good God, what, and their place was not clean, and those are my walking papers right there. So I'm homeless again, like homeless at 19 or 20, that age. Happy, joyous, and free, so I thought. Homeless at 37, 38, not so happy, joyous, and free. And I'm living over in an abandoned house on the east side of Charlotte. And I was spiritually dead, but I was physically alive. And I was just stealing out of stores. And I bought a property in California with some illegal proceeds up in Northern California. It was a really big property. My whole intent was to do this agricultural project. I was too drunk. I never even started it. I never even got there. I just once I saw it, I never even made it back. And I made a bunch of advance payments on it, and then I fell behind. And somehow I was contacted from a realtor in Trinity, California. And he's like, I can sell this property for you. I was like, you can? And so he ended up selling it, and after he paid off, what was owed, the taxes, his commission, whatever, all of a sudden I've got money, and here it is, money's going to solve my problem. And, I can still think that today. I can still, I think the lottery, somebody told me it was, really big right now. I don't really play the lottery, but I'm like, God, if I could hit that, then all my problems will be solved. And the only problem with if money's going to solve all my problems, I have no need for God. But anyway, so I've got money. I can get a car, I can get an apartment, and I can get off the street. I am set to do that. And that is my plan. That's my intent. And before I'm going to do that, and I'm going to quit drinking. Again, I've quit drinking hundreds of times, probably in my mind legitimately. This is it. I'm going to quit. And this is another one of those. But before I do that, I'm going to have a big weekend. I'm going to have the big hurrah, and I check into I thought it was a fine establishment. It was the Budget Inn. And this is in 2005, and they had a daily rate at that time that was $45 a night. And they had a weekly rate that was $135 a week. Now, I was at, about 10 years later, I was on a detox panel, and I shared this particular story, and someone raised their hand in detox, and they're like, it's only $29 a night right now. So this is the type of hotel that 10 years later went down in cost. You don't see that a whole lot. And, but I don't, 45 a night, that's $90, that's less than $135. I'm only going to be here for 2 nights. That is for sure. And so I just pay the daily rate for 2 nights, and I drink, and my plan is I'm going to go out, I'm going to hit the town, do all this. That doesn't ever happen for me. I end up locked up in the hotel room, and that's all I do. And but I also don't sleep very well, and after 2 nights, I'm worn out, I haven't eaten. So I need to pay the daily rate just one more day. I just need 1 day to recover and recuperate. So I go down, I just pay 1 more day. This is no big deal. And then I get this second wind. I start again. I start drinking again. And then so the same thing, next day, God, I overshot the mark. I'm worn out, I need to sleep in, and I pay the daily rate 1 more day. And the next day the same thing happens. I'm like, this is it. This is the last day. I pay the daily rate. The next day comes around, the same thing. I'm not going to live this way anymore, and I pay the daily rate. Anyways, I did that for 3.5 months. I kept paying the daily rate, and it didn't seem like I was powerless over alcohol. I thought I was in control of the situation, and I kept changing the mind. I knew my finances were deteriorating, but I kept saying, well, I've still got enough to get an apartment, and I'll get a car later. And I know a lot of people that I drank with at earlier stages or at different stages, And they had these goals, they had these values, and they were able to raise their behavior to meet those goals and those values. And what I do is I keep lowering my values and my goals to meet my behavior. I just keep lowering the bar and lowering the bar. And I'm back out on the street again, and I've got no money. And I walked into a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous for the, not the first time, I'm not the umpteenth time. And I didn't recognize this at the time. I didn't go because I was ready to get sober. I probably, if I remember, I think I went for coffee or cookies. Maybe a terrible cup of coffee. But I'll take a terrible cup of coffee. And, I think everyone in Alcoholics Anonymous, we all deserve an uncomfortable seat and a bad cup of coffee. That's just... what happened was my ears had opened up. And I started to, identify. I started to... not be so different than other people. And I was starting to really be convinced that, wow, what's working for them might just work for me. And so I went back to a couple meetings. I was at this one meeting. And like I said, I've always been a victim. And this one lady kind of, this was like a daytime meeting. It was an open discussion. And I said that I'm getting bad breaks and life's not fair. And she goes, honey, the fair comes once a year and you missed it. And I was like, oh my God, that's deep. That's as deep as I get right there. But I was like, whoa. But I started to realize, wow, and I asked someone to be my sponsor. And he said, pray about it. And I'm going to pray about it. And call me tomorrow. And I got his number and I was like, uh-oh. God's going to tell him I'm bad news, or, I don't know, this can't be good, though. But I called him the next day, and we got together, and what he said to me was that, and I don't think I'll forget this, he did not talk down to me. He might have laughed at me, but he didn't talk down to me. But he says, look, I'm no better than you are. I'm no worse than you are. I'm another alcoholic trying to stay sober one day at a time, and we can do together what neither one of us has been able to do by ourselves. And he got me involved in a home group. He got me involved in making bad coffee. He got me involved in taking the steps out of the big book. And I think the steps are these ridiculously simple actions that if I practice them and I make them a way of life, I'm going to get results that I've never gotten before. And that was my experience. I thought the fourth step and the fifth step was about, the worst things I've ever done, my war story, and that stuff needs to be said. But I started to realize that, I've been wrong. The way I've been looking at a lot of things is wrong. I was wrong about my mother. I was wrong about my sister. I blamed them for a lot of my problems, and I was wrong. And that change started to just happen for me. I think steps 4 through 9 are this prayerful action. And I started to take it, and I made amends. I made amends to... First, my parents, I made amends to them individually. My mom, I told you, she's a member of AA, so once it started, she kind of knew it was happening. And I said, look, I need to set up this payment plan with you, but more importantly, I want to be a better son. And she got choked up, I got choked up, and she hugged me, and she's like, you already are, and just be there when we need you. And so then I made amends to my dad, and I did make amends. Now, he ended up passing away. I was just short of 2 years sober. He got cancer. It happened really quickly. And he, it was 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So he probably had cancer before that. From the diagnosis to when he passed away, it was very quickly. And I was able to be there. And the last day he was alive, last couple of days actually, everyone, meaning everyone in the family, came into town because we knew it was his last day, and people were sitting there around him, and he was not, his eyes weren't open, or he wasn't talking, but he was conscious. And after a long day sitting there, people were like, we need to get something to eat, but one person should stay here. And I was like, that is going to be me. And so they went to get something to eat. I don't think it's going to happen this time. I've gotten choked up talking about my dad before. I got choked up really badly in Myrtle Beach, quivering, I don't even like that at all. And I had a guy, a sponsor with me, and we got out of the car, and I was like, I got really choked up that. And he looks at me and he goes, I think it was all that estrogen you took. But anyway, so they left, and I just told my dad now how I could see how good a dad he was and how fortunate I was to have him. And that if it was time for him to go, that it was okay, and that I was going to be okay. And I was holding his hand when he did it, and he just squeezed my hand. And it was just a real powerful moment for me. Everyone else came back, and they were like, why don't you go get something to eat? And it wasn't the night of my home group, but it was a meeting I was going to pretty regularly at my time, and I just opted to go to that meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, because I really think I'm at my best when I'm with you. I really do. When I'm with the fellowship of AA, I'm probably at my best. And being here makes me better out there. And so that's what I did. And then he passed away the next day, or it was like really just after midnight, but technically the next day. And like I said, I was coming up on 2 years. It was a few months after that. And my mom used to give me a card, always on my sobriety date, kind of like a birthday card. And this one was really long. And just the part I'll share, she just said, I want you to know that your dad died in peace, knowing that you were okay, and what a blessing you are in my life. And you know, everyone there, this has happened more than once, they thanked me for like contributing to the family, as opposed to being the opposite, taking from the family. And I don't know if they know this, they might know this. My mom certainly does. They're not thanking me, they're thanking Alcoholics Anonymous. So about my mom, so I guess it's almost 6 years ago, 5.5 years ago, whatever, was her 90th birthday. She was still kind of robust then and driving, but you know, starting to age for sure at 90. And we had a big 90th birthday for her. We in Charleston. We rented a house, and my sister has a house. We were down at the beach, and I was sitting on the beach with my nephew, who's an adult, and my mother. And one of those parasailing things goes by, and she looks up and she goes, you know, I've never done that before, and I've always wanted to. And my nephew goes, well, are you ready? And she's like, you know what, I'm ready. And she's like, let's do parasailing. And I'm thinking, that's not going to happen. My brother and I called just to like, you know, we're just going to say we tried. And then like, he's like, she's 90. And they're like, no problem. We took someone up in a wheelchair yesterday. So she picked 6 of us, and I was one of those 6 because that's how many the boat would hold on this particular one. And so we spent, I think it was half a day watching her go up, and we all went up 800 and something feet in the air, and her dropping her down, dipping her feet in the water. And like I said, I went from having no contact with my family to being a part of my family. And I just about missed it. And when they got back in the retirement community, they have a newsletter, and some of them don't know she's a member of AA, but she made the cover of the newsletter, cover of the whatever month it was, June or July, and but on the top of it, she was on the cover in this parasailing thing, and they said, high as a kite. And, but you know, Alcoholics Anonymous isn't the only thing in my life, but it's the best thing in my life. Without it, everything else I have wouldn't be possible. And you know, I think in the 12th tradition it talks about, and I try like, you know, it talks about there are great blessings may never spoil us, and that we may forever live in thankful contemplation of Him who presides over us all. You know, I need to remember that. Like, I generally look forward to coming to AA meetings and going to my home group almost all the time. I feel good. I really enjoy it. Now, when I wasn't sober, I went to a meeting one time. It was literally the longest hour of my life. It would not end. But that is not the case today. But even though that I generally feel good and I generally enjoy participation in Alcoholics Anonymous, I think by me suiting up and show up, it's still like an inside cry that I'm not cured of alcoholism. I might be recovered right here, right now, but I'm not cured of alcoholism. And I need to be here as much today as I did May 23rd, 2005. I really believe that. And, you know, I got involved in service in Alcoholics Anonymous. Corrections was really what kind of lit my fire. But I've gotten involved in other service because I'm the type of guy that will, like, I know some people go to a gathering and will get to know the name of your kids or your dog or what you do for a living just like that. Like, I'm much more introverted than that. I'm the person who's sitting in the back of the room just eating chips or whatever. But what service has done is it made my circle get bigger because it gives me something to talk about with people and to form a bond. And that's really like, you could make a case. It used to be in Charlotte, this restaurant, it's called the Manus Restaurant. It doesn't really matter what the name of the restaurant is, because there's diners like it all over the place. But you could make a case that I got sober outside of the meeting as much as in that diner as much as I did. Because even though I would go to that meeting and people would just talk about, they're still talking about the big book and stuff like that, but not just what it says, but how they applied it in their lives and their experience. And that's just really where I started to feel connected to not just Alcoholics Anonymous, but the world again. The last thing, I'm about out of time. I want to thank Blake again for having me. My mom broke her femur about 3 years ago, I think it is now. And I took her to the hospital, and she said it was terrible, the worst pain she's ever been in. She said she'd rather give birth to more children than have to go through that again. But we were sitting in the hospital. There was this article, just random, whatever, magazine or whatever, and it was this anthropologist, Margaret Mead. I had no idea who it was. And they asked her, a student asked her, what's the most important artifact that in the history, in her opinion? And yeah, I would think, a lot of us would think some kind of great tool or fish hook or something like that. And what she said was a healed femur bone. And my mom's sitting there with a broken femur bone. And the reason she said that is because that's the first sign that people took time to care for one another. Because, in long ages ago, if you had a broken femur bone, you're done. Like, you're not getting any food, you're a prey to other animals, you're done. But it's a sign, and I think, to me, I equate that to like Alcoholics Anonymous, that we sit there and we take care of each other. And so I'm really grateful to be here. I prayed before I came here. Like I said, my prayers are real simple. I pray and I meditate, most days. I think every day. I can say that. Maybe the quality varies a little bit. And I still, when I wake up any morning, I think this is in a daily reflection. I think that's where I got it. But what I do is, the first thing I do is I thank God for waking me up, that I'm alive. The second thing is I thank God that I'm sober. And the third thing is I thank God that I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. So thank you all for allowing me to be part of Primary Purpose.